And welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. And Dr. Lopkin, I think the overwhelming news item is the obvious, and that is the Iran-U.S. conflict. What's your view?
It certainly is. And, people are going absolutely crazy over this, talking about the possibility of World War III, which no expert believes is going to happen over this. People have made a huge deal, but they're forgetting about what actually has gone on in both recent history and longer history with the Middle East.
Well, isn't what's fueling it the Trump derangement syndrome?
A lot of it
if
is.
Obama did this, it would be probably hailed as a great act.
And let's not forget that Obama sent drone strikes in many, many times, and nobody ever questioned it without congressional approval.
Not any question. And I also am a little taken back. Actually, obviously, the biased media has been exposed anyway, but this really was, I don't want to be melodramatic, but a little disturbing. Like, their hatred towards Trump is so overwhelming that they're basically almost taking the side of Iran, saying, he was a charismatic leader and, brilliant. And a little scary.
It's not even, almost like they're taking Iran's side. There have been celebrities who have come out and said they are for Iran. Rose McGowan apologized to the Iranian people. Now, let's not forget the main thing that triggered this was they attacked our embassy.
Oh, no. The catch-22 of the whole thing, Dr. Lopkin, the whole thing is if Trump did not act and they took over our embassy or killed more people, whatever, some catastrophic event, they would have filed more impeachment for dereliction of duty and called it coordination with Putin. Who knows where it would have ended? There'd be no end to it.
They were going to go after him no matter what he did. Had he not done something, we would have had another Benghazi.
Oh, exactly. But again, diverging a little bit, we don't want to spend too much time. What is the focal point, the root of this hatred? Is it just because he's an outsider, or because he beat Hillary, or is it really a combination of both?
I think it's a combination. I think the fact that he's an outsider galls them, but the Democrats looked at Hillary Clinton's election as a coronation. They thought there was no way she could lose against the Republican. They rigged their own primary so that Bernie didn't have a chance against her. And the fact that they did all of this and lost still kills them. Now, what people are forgetting, though, is when you take the politics out of this, when you just look at what actually went on with us and Iran and the Middle East in general, a number of years ago, during the Obama administration, it was revealed that one of the 9/11 masterminds who had been captured and held at Guantanamo stated point blank to his captors, one of the major reasons that they decided to go forward with the 9/11 plan is that they didn't believe America would go after them. Because when Osama bin Laden attacked the USS Cole, Clinton had the opportunity to go after him and passed, primarily because of what the Democrats are yelling about now. Oh, it's going to lead to World War III. But the fact that we didn't go after them when they did this encouraged them to do more. Now,
there's no question.
Right, now they know they are going to be retaliated against.
Yeah, but let's focus on, you mentioned one thing I think is really critical. and that is the Democratic response, which again is scary to me. Someone who's been around the block as long as I have, you used to have Scoop Jackson back like in the 70s, maybe early 80s. JFK was no. Essentially, the Democrat. I mean, Pelosi clipping in the middle of this, doing what she's doing is undermining our own national security. Their hatred towards Trump is so out of control, and also their left-leaning ideology is just it's not the Democratic. I mean, I know that's overused, but it's really can't. It has to be addressed. The Democratic Party is not the Democratic Party of even 10 years ago.
No, it certainly isn't. And of all people, Alexandra Ocasio Cortez recently said in any other country, she and Joe Biden would not be in the same political party. But here in America, they are. They have tried to pull the Democratic Party so far to the left in order to meet their own needs. Now, I actually think that ideology and the hatred of Trump has a lot less to do with why they're so upset about this than the fact that he did it without consulting them. Over the course of Trump's presidency, he has shown Congress to be useless.
Oh,
And
they
they
are
are
useless. I mean, you really consult your Nancy Pelosi. I mean, what good
well,
can possibly come out of that?
and the fact of the matter is, so much that has been said to Congress has leaked to the press, has leaked
Well,
over and over again. Uh, Chuck Schumer asked Donald Trump point blank why he did not consult with Congress. Why he didn't tell actually it was why he didn't tell Congress what he was planning. And Trump's response was for the same reason we didn't tell the Iranians.
I like that. Politically, what? How do you see? How do you see this playing out?
Politically, it's a non-starter. It's
I
energized Trump.
disagree. Go ahead, but
No,
you go ahead. Go ahead with your point.
it's energized Trump's base to support him that much more, but it's equally supported anti-war activists and people that want us out of the Middle East, and I think those two factors cancel each other out.
The only caveat would say to that is you're uncommitted, you're independent. I, I think the Democrats need to watch themselves and not go overboard in their praise for this fallen leader, and they're taking the side of Iran. That could backfire, along with the whole. I think the impeachment thing is backfire. Now we're going to talk about that only for a second. I think Pelosi holding back, I think, was a mistake. I think it shows they had no case.
That's exactly what the narrative has become. Pelosi held back the impeachment from the Senate because they knew they did not have the case against him. And the fact of the matter is, they should have taken the time to build the case. That's what impeachment is supposed to be. But they wanted to rush it because they wanted to have impeachment as a weapon in the 2020 election.
Yeah, I think actually I'm surprised because Pelosi's very astute politically. It would have been much better off to be having this ongoing trial with witnesses. Discontinue it. I think wrapping it up was actually a mistake.
But that's the problem. That's what she wants. The Senate, who actually sets the rules for what the trial is going to be, for the most part, doesn't want to call witnesses. They don't want to investigate.
They don't have to.
They want to take what the House gives them, basically hear what the evidence was presented, and vote yay or nay. Period. The House.
Okay. Do you think Pelosi put stacks on more charges?
Well,
That's what she's kind of fishing for.
She can't stack on more charges now. The only thing she can do is pass on the impeachment. When they voted, the House closed their case. They can't now go back and add.
She did look at, and she saw. I think she got a judicial approval for having putting more charges on. Personally, we don't want to, continuously go into the impeachment saga. I think this is backfiring worse on the Democrats than I ever thought possible. Your view?
It's definitely backfired on them. They've energized Trump's base. And I mean, in all reality, this shouldn't have come as a surprise to them because the same thing happened to the Democrats during the Clinton impeachment. It backfired on the Republicans, and the Democratic base was fired up.
And the Republicans got their head handed to them in the congressional midterms. The only thing I would say about this whole Iranian situation with the conflict, it does have some potential downside if if the Iranians, and I think they would be smart. I don't obviously want this to happen, but I think they would be smart, astute, not to hit a military target because that's a tit for tat. I think two ways this can hurt Trump. If it escalates, they hit a military target. Okay, then Trump does his 52, sites or whatever. I think the biggest way it hurts Trump is that if, God forbid, they do a domestic terrorism incident, that could really hurt Trump.
That would definitely hurt Trump. That's one of the reasons that the target was what it was, because that's the guy that plans all of these terror attacks. So
okay, but I got it, but it's not the hardest thing in the world. We're obviously not going to give anyone any ideas to plan a terrorist attack and make a statement. And I think the press, unlike in previous years, would basically there'd be 24/7 and how this was a reckless event, and because of that, 20 people killed in Indianapolis or whatever.
The media would definitely jump all over it, but I think you're underestimating just how difficult it is not to plan a terrorist attack, but to implement one. The United States has stepped up its law enforcement tremendously since 9/11.
You're right, and the ability to hone in and to listen in and to track people. You're right. I agree with that.
And it's not just on a federal level. Local law enforcement has this ability. New York City has one of the best anti-terrorist teams in the world.
Oh no, that's why I mentioned that's why I mentioned something like a B city like Indianapolis, Cleveland, that kind of a thing would make an impact. Yes, so I also think, and kind of in closing, what do you think if they hit a military target that is Iran and then Trump responds overwhelmingly? You think that hurts or helps him?
I don't think he's going to respond overwhelmingly. I think he's already decided what the next steps would be. If they attack a military base, I think he will cherry pick targets and take them out one by one, the same way they took out this guy.
I think that's the proper response, because I think he'd be playing into their hands if he did an overwhelming response. I think that would be overplaying his hand.
And by doing it this way, something that the media, of course, completely whitewashes, Trump has shown that the United States is against Iranian terror, not the Iranian people. And that's an important distinction that has to be made.
Agreed. Well, it's certainly interesting, and I think it certainly makes for good news. I think it's something that the news media, and one of the last thing in closing is, it's really interesting to see the difference, the huge chasm in terms of news coverage between, let's say, MSNBC and CNN and Fox. Your final comment.
Oh, it's like watching alternate realities. I mean, it
really is.
The three cable stations really have absolutely no concept of what unbiased news is supposed to be. And unfortunately, most of the networks have also gone by the wayside in terms of impartiality. You really have to watch multiple news sources, find the commonalities, and that's where the truth lies.
I agree, but something, I kind of miss having the ability to have a neutral source. I think there's one station, doesn't make a difference, very small. They're kind of emerging, and the whole brand identity is, fair, not fair and balanced, neutral, whatever. CNN, as we already talked about, had that opportunity. I think they blew it tremendously.
No,
CNN could
I
have
think
just crushed it.
they
'Cause
could
I get
have.
sick of
I
listening
think
to
at this
Fox with
point,
Sean Hannity.
yeah, I think
Go
at
ahead.
this point, the world really needs the next Walter Cronkite. It didn't matter what his opinion was, you never saw it on the news. You got the full story and they let you make up your own mind. And we
Okay,
need
you and I agree on that, and I think most people would. Then why hasn't it happened yet? Zucker, I don't know how he's still in charge of CNN. It boggles the mind, but their ratings are plummeting because it's not even that you have to be an ideologue. I don't like listening to Sean Hannity
no,
either because I don't want to be fed red meat. And God, even if you're liberal, you don't want to be. I mean, it gets to be Rachel Maddow
the
conspiracy
problem
theory.
is the problem is that journalists are not being properly trained anymore. It used
Agreed
to
with
be
that.
when I was trained as a journalist, we were told you needed 3 independent sources before you could go with a story. Now, the story runs when the only thing they have is a tweet. There's no background check. There's no real investigation anymore. They're after, well, we'll get it out first, and then later on we'll correct it if we have to.
Because they're playing to their supposed audience, and in their minds, there's no downside because no one's going to call them on it.
Exactly.
Well, that concludes another edition of Carnivore Bites. We'll be back next week, Dr. Lopkin, and see what goes on.
And don't forget, coming up in February, Carnivore brings its radio show online live Fridays at 4, where you'll be able to call in and participate in the conversation. See
This
you
is going to
then.
be truly exciting.
Absolutely.
Truly exciting. Take care.
You've been listening to Carnivore Bites, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can catch us every week on carnivoreradio.com, exvadio.com/podcasts, the Apple Podcast Store, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and wherever you find podcasts.